Welcome, everyone. We're glad to have you joining us for our first webinar. My name is Dina Sankey, and I help support communications in the district. I'm here with Superintendent Steve Bass, who will be leading our 1-hour webinar about the 2018 Bond Referendum for Urbandale schools. Just a few items to mention before we get started. Letting you know that all participant microphones are muted. If you'd like to ask a question, please submit your question at any time during the webinar using the QA option on your screen. And Mr. Bass will respond to questions at the end of the webinar. This presentation will take roughly 35 to 40 minutes, followed by responses at the end to questions. So we will plan on ending promptly at 1 o'clock. And you can also find this presentation on our website. If you go to urbandaleschools.com/vote, it's within the materials for reference section. So now I'll turn it over to Superintendent Steve Bass.
Thanks, Dina. Welcome, everyone. We're glad that you're taking the time out of your day to be greater informed about the facility plan / referendum coming up on February 6th. A couple items that will, excuse me, technical difficulty for the moment. I usually like to start, and by the way, this is my 18th presentation, so I'm trying to hit all organizations and groups that have a desire to learn. And so again, we thank you for your participation. I usually start out by saying, you know, I've only been in the district for 2.5 years, and I have to share how vastly impressed I am with the district, the community, whether it's the school district or the greater community of Urbandale. I'm so impressed about how everyone works together in partnerships. It's kind of that small town feel with the big town opportunities. So I think this is a great opportunity for our kids. I also like to state, although we will spend a lot of time talking about elementary facilities, this is really a K-12 issue. We'll go over some of those rationales and why that is, but ultimately it's about doing what's best for our kids in this community. If you look at this diagram, it gives you an idea. 2 past referendums that the community graciously supported for schools took place in 2004 and 2007. Within those 2 referendums, basically the school district was the benefactors of 21st century facilities in the form of Webster Elementary, the middle school, as well as the high school. The middle school has renovations and additions, and we're basically trying to complete the picture. This 2018 Bond Referendum will ensure that all of our schools create great opportunities in 21st century facilities for our entire K-12 system. I do have to say, when I first came on board 2 years ago, I had an entry plan where I interviewed 64 people, and it was community members, students, parents, teachers, and I had asked them about the district. And probably the single word I heard the most was the term equity. When I'd say, tell me more, at that time I heard, well, we have a beautiful 21st century school in Webster on the west portion of the district, and then we have 5 other elementaries that are very dated and probably are not 21st century facilities. So ultimately, that's what we're really trying to get at with this referendum. I'm a firm believer, as I hope most people are, that all of our students deserve a great learning environment. Well, we have that extraordinary history and past and kind of our legacy, as it will. We also have to understand where we're currently at. This process of looking at facilities actually, I could say that it started long before I got here. There was a PEPL plan where the district basically, that was the last levy. Actually, it wasn't a levy. That was the last vote that the community supported the school district. And to be clear about that, when I talk about the PEPL plan, approximately 4 years ago, the community approved the district to spend money differently. The PEPL approval did not basically increase anyone's taxes, not even a penny. Basically, the school district was given the approval to spend money differently. School funding is somewhat hard to understand, but we have basically channels of funds, and we can only spend money in the way that the law says we can. So again, to be clear, the current plan is still in place. We've actually done several items on the PEPL list, including the first addition and renovation to one of those schools. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But last November, we had several meetings, one held at each facility. We also had a CLC, or Citizens Leadership Committee, made up of 33 individuals. That was parents, staff, community members. Basically, their task was to listen to the information shared by our community and then say, is our current plan the very best plan, or is there a better plan for our students as we look ahead? And as you can see, we also held community meetings, which ranged anywhere from 80 people up to 140. We also had a very successful survey where we got a lot of input from parents, community members, as well as our students. The first community meeting, this is kind of telling a little bit and a little bit concerning. We asked the folks at that one, when you walk into our elementary schools, what words come to mind to you? And this is called a word cloud. Basically, the words that came up more often are larger in color and in size. And, you know, being truthful, when I look at this, it's not exactly invigorating. It doesn't really get me excited about our schools. The thing I do always share is all of our schools in the Urbandale School District have phenomenal staff members. So again, this is nothing against our staff. It's nothing against even our custodian staff, who they do a phenomenal job. It's just, as you'll see very soon, our buildings have basically outlived their age of use. But again, not overly exciting when you look at our current state. School buildings were technically built to last 40 to 50 years. As you can see from this chart, the plan is to retire 4 elementary schools, as well as get us to build 2 new facilities. And that's what the referendum entails, as well as an addition to building a fitness center / wellness center at the high school, which is, by the way, on the current PEPL plan. But again, because it doesn't directly rate to students in the classroom, that plan would probably take 24 to 28 years from now before we could have that facility. So basically, the portion that was approved by the citizens and recommended to the board was to move that up and do that simultaneously with the creation and development of the first new school. But again, as you look at these schools, while they have really done a great job of serving us well, they're not 21st century facilities. Every one of these schools has had an addition built onto it, but the initial portions of those buildings, as you can see, were built between 1952 and 1968 at the newest. And even the Rolling Green 68 building is beyond its 50 years lifespan. I throw that word out there quite a bit about 21st century facilities. What we're referencing is, you know, the 21st century facilities have flexible space. They have space for students to work collaboratively, even for teachers to work collaboratively. A lot of terms that are used nowadays are called makerspace. We've got to continue to keep our students basically actively engaged by giving them project-based and problem-based learning. Integrated technology. We have lots of technology in this district, I'm proud to say. We don't have a one-to-one because we don't allow students to take their computers and technology home, but technically we have a 2-to-1 in this district. So we have lots of technology. The challenge is the infrastructure it takes. These older facilities, it takes a lot when we have to modify the infrastructure. When we talk about safe and secure, we all know the importance of our students and staff feeling safe in the environment. If students don't feel safe, let's face it, no learning will take place. So we want to continue making our schools even more safe. For one would be secured front entrances. At this time, the only schools in the district that have what is considered entitled a secured front entrance, basically what that means is where visitors must enter the building and go through the office before they have access to the school. Now, again, we have cameras and people must buzz in to get in our school, so that definitely is a nice safeguard. It could be that much more safer, though, if people had to get through the office to have access, and that's one piece we're looking at. The importance of natural lighting, you know, really just kind of ask yourself, if you're in a room where there's natural lighting, it's very bright, and again, not just because of the light fixtures, but the natural lighting is your mood's that much better. It's also shown research that, again, through the natural lighting, more open spaces, that students will learn at a higher rate, not only because they're proud of their facilities, just because of the temperature and the way a building looks. It really puts, when you have this openness, it not only puts learning on display, it also puts behavior on display, which again ties in with the way students act. You know, we're always confronting issues with bullying and misbehavior in schools because we have lots of kids. Having said that, students aren't misbehaving when people are directly watching them, but so usually they kind of look around. In these open spaces, basically, that behavior will be on display. So again, the research is clear that the impact of a positive 21st century learning space can have as much as a 16% influence in a positive way on their student achievement. And naturally, it also will help them to stay focused and not misbehave that much. So again, looking at comfortable moving furniture, basically that's every space should be able to be modified into something else. I think back of the story when I was in elementary school, just moved into a school is when the open concept came open. And then when I was in college working for the school system, guess what? I built walls in that exact same school that I went into, that open space. And now, not too many years ago, you guessed it, they took those walls down again. So again, looking to the future, we've got to have furniture that's movable, even walls that can be moved, again, so we can create the space that's needed for that time. Highly interactive and engaging, again, nothing is more important than having our students engaged in their learning themselves. Again, getting them actively involved in that learning process is the most critical thing we can do. Student-centered, honestly, I think our schools do a phenomenal job of making decisions based on students already. So again, but it is a 21st century kind of requirement, and again, something we're always striving for. This next graph is a little bit kind of disheartening, truthfully. We went through the process with the citizens leadership community. We went through a process called the Clio Process, Quantitative Educational Learning Environment. And through that process, the administrators from all the schools sat down together. There's 6 different categories. For example, sustainability of a building over 30 years. Again, that's the lifetime. Looking at the educational adequacy, looking at the maintenance requirements, looking at safety. So through these 6 areas, there were 94 different questions. The reason we sat down and did it together is we knew, first of all, we would compare schools to one another, and then we're also comparing schools to what is considered 21st century facilities. As you can see from this graph, Webster Middle School and the high school all score relatively well. They're heading on their way to that level of excellence as, again, the requirements of a 21st century facility. Where it gets a little disheartening is this was done after the remodel and additions to Karen Acres. If you look at Karen Acres, after we just spent roughly $4.5 million, quite frankly, we're almost satisfactory. And I, for one, and I think the board supported this as well, that's hard to live with. If we're going to eventually spend $40-some million or more, depending on inflation, on our schools, surely we can do better for our students than almost satisfactory. So even if we stayed with the current plan of building and our additions and remodeling, we still have old structures. The example I also use is I've replaced my ankle, my knee, my shoulder, my hip, but I still have an old structure. We can't get away from that. And even at Rolling Green, while it definitely looks that much nicer, so aesthetically, I think kids feel much more pride in it. It still doesn't give us the space we needed, as we did not change the footprint of that facility. We built from within the boundaries that we already had. Again, a very nice facility, but not necessarily, as you can see, considered a 21st century facility. Probably the most important thing you can gain from this, the numbers can be confusing, but the thing you can gain from this is we need to right-size our district. When we look at having 6 elementary schools in an area 2 by 4 miles, which, by the way, we're the smallest geographical district in the state of Iowa. So I hear a lot about the desire for neighborhood schools. Well, we all like that. The truth is, with 4 elementary schools, we'll still have neighborhood schools because we're very close. But basically what this depicts is through the next 30 years, we'll have a 50% higher return on our investment if we go down to 4 elementary schools, again, as proposed in the referendum to build 2 new. So what does this mean? Again, we're just at a very critical time. Those 4 schools that we mentioned, we're at a place where a lot of the core components of a building, such as HVAC, electrical, again, the need to move forward with 21st century technology, as well as just having space. This is the time to take a look at it before we spend lots and lots of money on the current plan. As you can see in that bolded statement, over the long term, again, just looking at 30 years, and these buildings would last much longer, it would cost more to maintain 6 elementary schools than if we built these 2 new schools, not to mention we wouldn't have 21st century schools. The other piece I like to mention somewhere in here is this is not a referendum or a choice to say, hey, I'd like to keep 6 elementary schools instead of 4. The truth of the matter is, we will definitely, if we even stayed on the current plan, the way the funding has been, it is virtually impossible to maintain 6 elementary schools with less than 300 students. We're not efficient, we're not effective as we can be because we're inequitable because we have shared staff. For example, if you're a specialist teacher at the elementary level in this district, unless you're at Webster, you're at 2 or possibly 3 buildings. And we lose people to local districts because it's nice to be in one district and basically have that common schedule and feel that that is your staff and your home. So again, even if we stayed on the current plan, it can be done, but we basically wouldn't end up with anything near a 21st century facility. We're trying to get efficiencies. We have inefficiencies and inequities, not only within our district, because while we have a desired state for certain numbers on grade levels, it's hard to do that in this district while still trying to keep people, quote, in their neighborhood area. Basically then, we're very reactive. It's hard to plan ahead whenever we have so many buildings and so many different places where students might go that are 1 and 2 section buildings. So we're moving families, not necessarily can they get in their neighborhood school, because again, we have so few of sections. Where if we get to a 4 section facilities like we're looking at, when I say sections, I'm talking about how many classrooms per grade level. For example, a first grade, there'd be 4 first grade classrooms, 4 second grade, and so on. That's a 4 section facility. I had also mentioned about the retention of staff. That's always a challenge. And again, one of the areas that explain that it's not just an elementary concern is the idea at the high school for that fitness center. Since 1960, we have always had to convert various areas to use as a fitness/weight facility. There has never been a dedicated space for fitness, whether it's weight training or for dance, for the jaywalkers to practice. The proposal plan is to basically do a 2-story with the weights and cardio at the lower level, as then a large fitness area on the 2nd floor for yoga, for PE classes, for the jaywalkers, for, again, a lot of various needs. I think once, space is a hot commodity, and once we have open space, I'm sure it'll be used even through the adult education courses as well. Let's talk a little bit about looking into the future. This is a $59 million bond referendum. Again, the proposal that'll be on the referendum is to build 4 new elementary schools, and these will be 2-story, by the way. One would be built, first one would be built on the Olmsted site, and the second elementary would be built at the Valerius site. Not that there's anything wrong with 2-story, but the reason we're going to 2-story is in a perfect world, we'd have additional acres to build on. Since we don't, we need to build upward. And again, still have very beautiful, appropriate schools. If you look at the schools nowadays that are 2-story, they really don't look like the old 2-stories that were around when I was a kid. After those schools, once we move students into those facilities, the year-round school that is currently at Rolling Green would move to Kieran Acres. The reason is we have enough parents in this community that still wished they liked that year-round schedule. Because it's still a desired state for many parents, we put this into the plan to still have a year-round school. And again, why not move them into the facility at least that has had renovations? It probably won't grow to the need for a 4-section building, so that's the way we can keep the year-round school open for those families who choose to have it. We currently have preschool at 3 of our elementary schools. Getting us down to 4, we would make sure that we would have preschool at all 4 of those locations. Makes it that much easier for families as well. And a lot of people have said, well, are you looking at growth? Well, we are. And while we don't have a ton of growth in Urbandale, it is starting to shift a little bit. We also know it's likely to have growth out west toward the Webster community, because that's where there's approximately 100 acres, yet that is considered residential. It sounds like, talking to the city and looking at their future plans, they're saying in probably 7 to 10 years is when that'll start being developed out there. But we also know our high school is getting pretty full as well. So again, the board put in $3.5 million basically to do an addition at Webster or the high school. In addition to this $59 million, it would build, furnish, and equip that fitness/wellness center we talked about. And my next few slides will tell you a little bit more about the construction starting dates. I think the first thing is, why this plan? Why did the Citizens Leadership Committee, why did they select this plan? We actually started looking at 11 different plans, narrowed it down to 7, then narrowed it down to 5. And again, the current plan, the PEPL plan, being one of those. Again, I had mentioned the importance about equity. I don't think I could overstate that. All of our students deserve a 21st century facility, no matter where they are, no matter where they live. We know it'll make an impact on student achievement, and it'll also set us up for the next 50 to 60 years. Efficiency. Again, we had talked about the dollars we spend on our operating inefficiencies because we have 6 elementary schools. And we use the term repurposing instead of save, but basically we can repurpose up to $1.8 million per year when we get down to 4 elementaries instead of 6. Opportunities, again, there are plenty of K-12 opportunities, not just at the elementary. Probably the first thing we always look at is class sizing. We always want to keep class sizes down, whether it's at the elementary, middle school, or high school. That is a critical part of who we are as a district. But truthfully, the funding that schools have had, I think most programs have had in the last several years, the piece of the pie is not as big as it once was, and there's been reductions. In the last 9 years, schools have received 1.8, an average of 1.8 in funding increase. Prior to then, we received probably too much, but even at the 1.8, we all know the cost of living is somewhere usually closer to 3 to 3.25%. We're a business like everyone else, and if we start seeing cost of services going up higher than the rate of new income, then first thing that'll happen, so we don't have to reduce staff, is it'll be increased class sizes, and then it'll be starting to decrease program opportunities for kids, a drop in the dollars we put toward technology. Those are all things we think that the referendum will definitely help move us forward in a positive way, so we don't end up doing those things. When we talk about repurposing, these are just some ideas. None of this is locked in stone, but what could we do with $1.8 million annually? We have a desire to have a teacher librarian in every building. We have a desire to have an ELP or talented and gifted teacher in every facility. We want to make sure students at the high end, as well as the students that struggle, have the resources they need so they're successful. We also know from current practice, we have facilitators of family outreach. We want to help our families, so it's not just about students. We're in a partnership here in this education with families as well as our community, and we're trying to do everything we can to, again, give people the resources to be successful. While we have lots of technology teachers in the district, we have no tech integrationist. We don't have a specific plan about how to use technology and increase learning opportunities. Again, it's kind of luck of the draw right now. If you end up with a teacher that's really good with technology, your child's exposed to a lot of that. We think that if we, again, add this into the curriculum, as well as have people with the appropriate skill sets, having a tech integrationist would also help our students be that much more successful for their future. And of course, as I mentioned, reducing class sizes is very critical. It's also about programming, not just class sizes. Again, we want to make sure that students have access to high level of learning now and in the future. If you notice on there, increased AP courses. Those are high level college courses, but it's also about concurrent courses. The district does a really good job. I think next year we're adding 5 concurrent courses. When I say concurrent, that means students who are taking courses at the high school level, but are also acquiring college credit at the same time. Last year, Urbandale Community School District saved families and students over $1.1 million because of the money they did not have to pay to take college coursework. And again, we'd like to continue those efforts because it's good for kids. Another issue back to why this plan, again, safety. We talked about the importance. We need to do everything we can to continue basically ensuring that all of our facilities are safe and secure. And accountability, this one we're probably pretty excited about. When we had originally looked at this, we know the projects would take 75 cents per thousand of assessed value. The district took a second look and said, what can we do basically to lower the impact on our tax-paying citizens? So again, much like what was done when the PEPL passed, the school district is taking on 2/3 of the burden, and we found that we can adjust, and it really shows how well the district has done in the past years to ensure that the money is available and we can still meet the current needs of the students. Well, now looking ahead, we can basically build the 2 elementary schools and the high school fitness center at a minimal tax increase of 25 cents per thousand. So what does that mean as far as if I'm a homeowner? Naturally, though, I will say our people that are commercial pay a greater rate, and we're very grateful for them as well. And I don't mind sharing, while I haven't talked with everyone, I have met with multiple business people, and they're very supportive of this. They understand that strong schools make for a strong community, and strong community makes for a strong workforce. So it's all a win-win-win situation. So if you're looking at this chart, this gives you an idea. If your home has an assessed value of $100,000, your increase with that 25 cents per thousand is $1.09 per month, or just over $13 for the year. As you can see right below, the average home in Urbandale, Iowa is just under $240,000. So if you were to live in a home with that valuation, your increase would be less than $33 per year. A lot of people say, no, you really mean per year, not a month? That's per year. So again, very doable. And if you're fortunate enough to live in a $400,000 home, your tax increase is still less than $56 per year. So again, for what we're gaining for our students, we think it's very positive, and it's a great investment for our school district as well as our community. Next, we're going to go into a little bit about the timelines. Get a lot of questions on this, and rightfully so. Basically, the first facility that we would look at would be the one built at the Olmsted location. This would not take place if the referendum passes in February. This does not take place next school year. So as you can see, we have lots of time to start making basically informed and intentional decisions. So the construction would start the summer of 2019, again, more than a year and a half away. The challenge is that we would have to temporarily displace the Olmsted students. We are talking to churches, we're talking to anywhere in Urbandale that has any type of large space that could be used. So again, it's a temporary displacement. We want to basically make it as painless as possible. Having been through this before, I will tell you the kids will be fine because we're still serving them with our wonderful staff. They'll just be in a different facility for a couple years. They'll be fine. They'll actually think it's kind of neat, truthfully. So while there are some logistics to work through, very doable. For the most part, any school district who's ever had to move a school or build a new one has probably gone through this. So you can see we would have temporary displacement for the years 2019-20 and 2020-21. And then the fall of 2021, that Olmsted new school would open. Basically at that point, the Olmsted and Jensen students would move into that new facility. This is the timeline for the second facility, currently the Valerius site. Again, the first thing you have to notice is it doesn't start construction until 2023. You might notice there's a 2-year span between the completion of the first school, 2021, and the starting construction of the second. The reason being is, again, as we, quote, borrow money against future dollars that we'll have in, the PEPL and SAVE dollars, the SAVE is the state penny, PEPL is the physical plant and equipment levy. Basically, that gives us 2 years to build capacity to be able to pay for it. We can only basically borrow out future to a certain number of years, and we need that 2-year span to basically build that capacity. But as you see, it's very similar. It's on 2-year construction. These buildings, by the way, will be similar in certain areas. There'll be, as far as they may look a little bit different because the sites are different, but basically it's called archetype. Basically the buildings will have very much similar, the same items, but again, because the sites of the current grounds are different, they might be moved in different places on that grounds because again, it fits better that way. But the easier thing about this is when we displace students from the Valerius School, basically, if you recall, once we've already moved the Jensen students into the new facility at Olmsted, we have an empty Jensen sitting there. So again, a very like-sized school as Valerius, we can move the entire students and staff from Valerius to the Jensen site while it's being constructed. And I think that'll make it a really neat way. I've also heard people say, you know, I don't really want my students displaced. Well, the truth is we can't get away from it. Even with the current plan, if we talked about additions and renovations, we would have to displace students because it's impossible to renovate on the inside without moving students. We were able to do this at Karen Acres because, again, they had several open classrooms. Most of it was a new addition, and we also were able to get most of the work done in the summer. So again, a little bit different situation. It was the smallest project in the district. As if we were to move forward with these other ones, again, just not possible. And again, we wouldn't have 21st century schools. So that concern of temporary displacement would always be there. A couple other things about this. We also realize that, you know, we might have to do some additional support of parents for transportation during this time because, you know, your school may not be as close as it once was or the temporary placement. So we'll look into that. We also know because of some of our busy streets, we may have to add some additional people helping at crosswalks as well. Another great question that arises, people often ask, so what are you going to do with those buildings that are closed? Again, the Olmsted and Valerius buildings would be raised, removed to make space for the new ones. But looking at Jensen and Rolling Green, if you recall, Rolling Green year-round school goes to Karen Acres. At this time, we're not sure. They would be retired. Lots and lots of options though, and these are just a couple. There's actually several others. We, first of all, will maintain the grounds. We're not gonna let the grass go crazy. We're not gonna let windows be broken and not maintained. We will do everything we can because, again, if you look at some of the options, we may repurpose those in the district. On the current PEPL plan is a need for an administrative office. Again, we're out in the Aurora Business Park. Quite frankly, it's not real family friendly. We look like everyone else out here, and we also lease it, so we don't own it. I, for one, think we're kind of throwing maybe money away long term when we will have these spaces sitting there. So without a whole lot of modification, I think that could happen. That wouldn't happen though to the extremely when everything else is over because we need to meet kids' needs first. Part of the current PEPL plan is we have no facilities for maintenance equipment. We do not even have a garage in this district for maintenance facilities. So that's part of the plan as well. Another could be high dollar item where maybe we could utilize the gym spaces and turn those into storage spaces or for vehicles or what have you. Another option, we could rezone the area, make it residential, remove the buildings, sell the grounds off. We could do a modification. We could keep the playgrounds. For example, the playground at Jensen is actually a city park. So I'm guessing that will maintain as a playground. But again, we could rezone part of it as residential. Another one that's not listed here is we have an alternative school. Maybe we move the alternative school in with the administrative office. Again, not sure. It's probably not appropriate for this board to make that decision. It'll be, again, 7, 8, 9 years down the road. Could be as much as 9 depending on how the transition goes from the year-round school. But again, several things could happen in those 8 years. So while we are aware of the options and more might arise, these are just some of the things we could do, but probably not appropriate to address it at this point. Again, just kind of a recap. If the referendum passes, the fitness center as well as the first elementary school on the Olmsted site would be constructed. They would start roughly the same time. Naturally, the fitness center would finish sooner, probably within a year, because it's a much smaller project. It would be an addition onto the high school. We're not 100% sure if it'll be on the west side or east side of the current south gym, but that information and details will come at a later point. As you can also see on here, we also have how much money was designated from the referendum per project. The fitness center, the board approved $3.5 million for that addition, $26 million for each of the elementaries. The reason Valerius technically is the same, because technically they're not the same. Technically Valerius was $4 million less as far as the first estimate, but we're also thinking as it's down the road, there's probably going to be some inflation in there, so we need to make sure we're covering that as well. And then you'll see, again, the board also approved $3.5 million for a potential addition either at Webster or at the high school, depending on where it's needed. And again, if we're looking at this as a long-term plan, you know, those additions probably wouldn't be needed for 15, 20, 25 years, not sure. But while we're doing the referendum, the impact again on taxes is very minor. For that $100,000 home, it's an additional 80 cents a year. For the $240,000 home, it's $1.85 per year. So again, very minimal. So it only makes sense to look to the future. And again, it's not just a short-term question. It's how do we meet the needs now and into the future? And of course, the current PEPAL plan, we're still going to do all those projects. There's a lot of projects that have already been completed. Of course, in addition to doing the Karen Acres project, we resurfaced the track. We're currently putting in baseball lights. We're currently working on the drainage on the baseball and softball field. Within, I think, January, we'll be taking in the bids for the SoundCloud for the PAC. Still have many needs still coming, and we'll continue to utilize those dollars to meet the needs of the district. I do want to inform you that while we've had one community meeting on December 4th, we have another one coming up on January 23rd. Very soon we will start looking at some diagrams so we can get some concept of what the school might look like. I do forewarn you that when you see those, that's not a guarantee that that's what it'll look like. It just gives us a starting place to springboard to talk about what we like, what we dislike. So again, we're asking people to come to these meetings. We'll also go to our staff members and ask them directly, especially when we get to the internal items, well, what do you desire for kids? As well as we'll look at the research. You know, I just kind of like to leave you with one kind of thought is, how great would it be if all of our students would feel the power of a positive experience of all of our schools, and that would open up basically their self-discovery, giving each of them a sense of their own potential and a base for which for them to dream. I think part of our job as a school district is to empower kids and to make sure they have dreams bigger than where they're currently at. And quite frankly, I think these 21st century facilities would be a great start to keep moving us in that direction. So ultimately, if we could spend less dollars over the next 30 to 50 years building 21st century schools than going with the current plan, I think it's the thing to do. The time is right, the need is real, and it can be done at a very reasonable rate. Ultimately, the decision will be up to our voters on February 6th, and I encourage everyone to get informed and vote. If you're looking for any additional information, you can go to this website here. We have anywhere from all the agendas to the minutes, frequently asked questions, all kinds of information out there. And again, get involved and get informed. Share the true facts with people. I think ultimately, if people are aware of the facts, I think they'll support it for the most part. The referendum does take, for passage, does take a 60% supermajority of the people who turn out and vote on that day. Also, the eligible voters are those people who live in the Urbandale School District. It's not just okay if you live in the Urbandale City, you must live in the Urbandale School District. And same thing with the tax increase, that would only affect you if you live in the school district. So lastly, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be informed. And if you have any questions, please email, please call, whatever works for you. I'm going to look at, I just have just a couple of quick questions that came through the webinar, so I'm going to address those at this time. So the first one says, based on the age of the buildings being removed, has asbestos abatement been reviewed as part of the cost? Again, We haven't itemized everything, but again, our contractors and architects basically have considered that in there. When we talk about removal, again, the entire buildings will have to be removed. And when you raise a building, that's usually part of the fee. And by the way, we cannot use referendum dollars when you raise a school. So that'll come out of our own general fund. But naturally, that'll be done in a safe manner because there are laws that we must follow. I'm looking at another one. It said you had mentioned class size in middle school and high school. What about the elementary? Combining multiple schools in 2 larger structures. What is the class size? We're actually hoping, first of all, the class size will stabilize. For example, in 3rd grade in this district, because again, our small schools, we range anywhere from 18 in a classroom up to 26 in 3rd grade. Again, because we're trying to keep students in their neighborhoods and we only have 1 to 2 sections in those buildings. So that creates inequities even across the district. The board has currently a set of numbers that they've approved for the maximum. Once we get over that maximum, then we either look to A, moving 1 student or 2, again, probably the newest student that came in, or we add a new teacher in a section. The challenge is with the small schools, we don't have probably additional classrooms to move those sections, but those are things we do definitely look at. Another question came in. Do you anticipate another phase in the future after this bomb to get the final elementary Karen Acres modified? I'm not sure how to answer that. The problem is to do that, we would have to basically start over again. The current, we followed when we did the addition and renovations right now, we followed the current footprints, barring tearing that building down. I mean, that's what you'd have to do to make it a 21st century school. I would say at this point, this board would not tackle that. And I don't know if I want to, because after we just spent $4.5 million, I'm not sure we can jump right in and tear down or even, again, because that's what you have to do to change those footprints. And since the year-round school is a choice school, I think the only thing we could say is parents, if they want that year-round school, it is what it is for right now. Down the road, I guess I don't know how to answer that, because a lot will depend on if the desire still is high for that. Does the increase go up, or do people look at these new facilities and say, wow, I want my students to go there? So again, I apologize to that person not directly being able to answer that. I just don't know that future. Someone says, can you walk through the math regarding the tax increase? Basically, let's see if I have my phone. Basically, if we're talking residential, give you an idea. I'll use the average home, $240,000 home. Basically, there's a rollback percentage that we pay taxes on. Even though your assessed value might be $240,000, you do not pay taxes on that. There's a rollback of basically you pay taxes on roughly 57% of that, which again is roughly $136,000. Then of course there's homestead credit, which is rare, but it's or not rare, but it's limited. It's roughly $5,000. So then the actually taxable value of that home is $131,000. You multiply that times 25 cents, and that gives you basically $33 per year, or $2.74 per month. So that's basically how it's figured, because a lot of people forget that they're really not taxed on that, their entire valuation of their home. I have a question here of how far down the road was the $59 million projected pay for itself, as opposed to just maintaining the current facilities? Through that Clio process, the architects and firms, we actually looked at how much money we would spend versus sustaining a building for 30 years, or looking at the lifetime, or looking at the new buildings. So again, I can't say how it was basically projected, but basically the architects and the building firm basically looked at that. And when we first started the project, we looked at first, what would it cost us to maintain our facilities? Just looking at the current needs. And then also, I believe they look at the lifespan of items such as your HVAC, such as your boiler systems, and those types of things. Another question. Will there be busing scheduled put out for children who no longer walk? Naturally, we think we can notify parents, especially when we're in this transition, 5 to 6 months in advance. It's not just going to be a, week before school, here's where your kids will go to school. We'll have that all worked out. We also naturally, if we were to get to 4 schools, naturally we would have to rezone. And again, that's with the intent trying to keep students closest to their neighborhood school. I would like to state one other thing, though it's kind of tied to this. I've had many people over this last year talk about open enrollment. We do have the benefit of being the second highest open enrollment in district in the state of Iowa. We have approximately 150 students that go out of Urbandale, but we have 750 that come in, so that's a positive of 600. First of all, we have to take those students. It is illegal for us to not accept open enrollment. And secondly, again, if we were to, even if we had the authority to say, nope, we don't want any open enrollment here, quite frankly, because we've done it for years and years, we'd go broke. I'd be closing schools next week if we didn't have our open enrollment students, going from, again, the dollars that we acquire from those students. And we're glad that we're a destination school. We're very proud of that. A lot of it is our size. A lot of it is the size of our high school. A lot of it is just the parents who know that when their kids come to Urbandale, they're going to be well taken care of. So we do have to continue with open enrollment, and it's a positive. Another question just came in. Will the entire Cairn Acres have an extended year-round calendar after Rolling Green moves there? I guess I am a little confused, but it'll continue to be like the current year-round calendar as long as the state continues to approve every 2 years we have to turn in a waiver to continue with that. If you're not aware, Rolling Green is one of 4 schools in the state of Iowa that is on a year-round calendar. Also, what year will the last school? That's kind of remains to be seen. It could be, again, we'll really have to see how the transition goes. I'm not sure how long or what the impact is of moving 2 schools into 1. If we can get that all taken care of, it could happen in year 8, or it could be rolled into year 9 from this point. So, any other questions? Will any updates be done to Jensen? Again, since Jensen students would be moving into the new Olmsted, which is the first school, we'll do everything we can to maintain it. If you notice this year, we spent thousands of dollars to repaint the inside. So again, we're not letting it go. We are trying to do what we can to maintain all of our facilities. But naturally, if something huge and drastic came, it'll depend a lot if the referendum basically gets approved or not, depending on how much we'll put into those facilities. These are great questions. Keep them coming if you have them. If you have the question, I'm sure others do as well. Well, I think we'll sign off. Just because we're done here doesn't mean that your questions wouldn't come to you at some other point. Please feel free to send me an email. Please feel free to call me. Stop me at a basketball game or wrestling meet. We thank you for your partnership. And again, I appreciate you spending your important time to be better informed. Thank you very much. Go Jayhawks.